Did we underestimate the Orioles? I think I did. Meanwhile, the two teams from the 2013 World Series are going in opposite directions.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast where we talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, where's my lower third? Where did it go? There it is. You can call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and I am now in my fifth season here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Also want to just let you know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB today. You'll get $10 off, 10% off your first month. I'm sorry, I just read that slightly wrong for a second. This happens from time to time. Let me just bring up something. Sometimes a team could have a surprise year. Sometimes a team can overachieve. And sometimes that could be a bit of a fluke. Sometimes you have a team that you go like, wow, they looked really great, and things kind of fall apart the next year because they come crashing to earth. Last year, the second half of the season, especially, the Baltimore Orioles went on a great win streak, and a team that has been flopping on the dock like a fish since losing the wild card game in 2016 and been completely irrelevant since the Encarnacion home run off of, well, it was, it was Ubaldo Jimenez, of course. The Orioles came back after a big stretch of irrelevancy and had a winning season last year. They didn't really contend. They got to the cusp of the wild card game a couple of times down the stretch. But in the end, they had a winning record, and it was a pat them on the head. Good job there. I didn't buy them. I didn't buy them going into this year because I felt they need to build upon that. They needed to take that winning season and take it up a notch, make some moves in the offseason. I thought Carlos Correa, who seemed to sign with every other team, would have been a perfect fit with Baltimore. And when they didn't do that, and there seemed to be unrest in the front office and even whispering, like, could the Orioles move to Nashville or someplace like that? I thought, oh boy, it's going to be a mirage. It's going to be a mirage. Now, as it turns out, here we are. It is the 5th day of May. Happy Cinco de Mayo for those of you who celebrate. And the Orioles are one of the few 20-win teams in baseball as of this recording. And they just finished a strange series with the Kansas City Royals. They wound up winning the game on Thursday by a 13-10 score. I looked to see if it was the Ravens versus the Chiefs or if it was the Orioles versus the Royals. Now, it was a game, Aroldis Chapman lost the game for Kansas City. I bet you didn't remember he played for Kansas City at this point. And the Orioles just, turned on the slugging machine there. And when you look, who are the big sluggers today? Santander, what a surprise. Santander, he must only hit when I pay attention because his average is only 241. But every time I flip over, he has another hit or another home run or something like that. 4 runs batted by Urias. They did not get good pitching, but there you go. They won the game. And they are keeping pace with the Tampa Bay Rays, who finished their sweep of the Pittsburgh Pirates. But the Orioles are, 7-3 in their last 10 games. They're 21-10, and while the why the Royals, sorry, the Rays, I'm just saying, I'm like Carlos Correa, I'm signing with every other team. Well, the Rays are still, off on this unbelievable run. They still haven't lost 7 games, let alone 10. The Orioles are 21-10. 21-10. That would be first place by a few games in the West and in the Central, and in almost in and I think in the National League West as well. Okay, maybe I'm wrong on that, but they're the best wild card team so far. Now, granted, it is too early to be checking the standings, and as a couple of people pointed out, the Orioles are essentially beating lousy teams right now. But here's the deal: if you want to contend, what are the two things you have to do? You have to beat the stuffing out of the teams that stink, and you have to hold your own with the teams that are good. And if you do that, you're going to wind up with a winning season. So the Orioles are doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah, the teams they're playing are teams with low winning percentages. Granted. And starting tomorrow, who do they start to play on over the weekend? Who do they play? I don't see their. Oh, they're playing the Braves. Okay, that is going to be a tough series because the Atlanta Braves, another 20-win team, have been playing terrific baseball. And you're starting to see a little bit when some of these terrific teams clash that which team is maybe the real contender, which team is taking advantage of some weaknesses in the schedule. We saw the Pirates and the Rays clash, and the Rays swept the series. Granted, they weren't all blowouts. Today was 3-2, but the Rays won all those games. The Orioles are winning the games they're supposed to win. And if you take a look at the team, you have players like Santander, who had a big season last year, got some big hits. You got Ryan Mountcastle, who's had some big games so far. You've seen Cedric Mullins, who's been contributing big time. You have Adley Rutschman, who is as advertised, and everyone, the player that you thought they were going to be. Austin Hayes has been doing a good job. And there's another player I want to bring up because he is a classic example of why you can't always judge a trade right away. And that's Dean Kramer. Now, Dean is a pitcher, if you don't know who Dean Kramer is. He has pitched pretty well this year, thank you very much. Okay, he's not off to a great start, but he's had a couple good outings, a couple of bad outings, but he's an effective starting pitcher in his 20s and is one of the ones that the team is going to lean on a little bit. And lest we forget that he was part of the Manny Machado trade, a trade that I have been maligning the whole time, mainly because the main chip in that trade, who was Yusniel Diaz, who was supposed to be a great, a great player who was supposed to come up and be the big star, the big huge star for the Baltimore Orioles, and be that to be that all around slugger to make people forget about Manny Machado. This is a guy who was a top ranked prospect, top 100 prospect in the Dodger organization, was someone who had power, someone who had speed, was going to be the player that the Orioles built their franchise around, and was going to be the big key in the deal for Manny Machado. Well, it didn't work out that way. Yusniel Diaz has played one more game in the major leagues than me. However, having a player like Dean Kramer in your rotation shows that maybe, just maybe, if he starts to pitch like he did last year and the team continues to play, maybe that trade won't be a wash. Because unless you've forgotten, Manny Machado is not doing a lot with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, eventually Tampa Bay is going to come to earth. Do you know how I know that? Even with the sweep of the Pittsburgh Pirates over the weekend, let me just calculate this right. I'm going to go to my calculator right here. They are playing at an 813 winning percentage. 813. If you project an 813 winning percentage over 162 games. Do you know what you're going to get? Drum roll, please. That will be a 131 win season. Now, the Rays are a good team. I do not think that they are going to go 131-30. If they, I will eat crow if they do. But eventually, they'll come a little bit back to earth. And Baltimore is basically holding serve. I've got a bunch of Oriole fans who listen to this podcast who say, why haven't you talked about this team? Why haven't you talked about this team? Fact of the matter is, I wasn't sure what they are. And they could very well, we talked about this with Miller Thomas the other day. There have been teams that got to great starts, like Kansas City a few years ago, or the Angels last year, that could fall apart by the end of May. That's why the end of May is the real first checkpoint. And this series against the Braves is going to be a big, long look in the mirror for the Baltimore Orioles. They have beaten up the teams they're supposed to beat. And they have the players that they can score big time. And today, when they did not get good pitching and they still wound up winning, is a good sign. Because if you wind up winning games you have no business winning, eventually those add up. So we're going to take a good look. This is gut check time for the Baltimore Orioles. Is this going to be a team that is a good team that happened to have one really great month? Is this going to be a real contender, or are they a bunch of phonies? We are going to find that out. And when we do, we're going to see something in Baltimore. Because let me tell you something. Baltimore is drooling to have the Orioles be good. When the Orioles are good, Baltimore is not a good baseball town. It is a great baseball town, and one that I would like to see rise again. So, in our second segment, we take a quick look, as I teased before, of the fact that, well, the two teams from the 2013 World Series seem to be going in opposite directions and not in the way that I thought they were going to. But first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Now, look I am a big believer in therapy. I think that I think that it works, and I think that it's something that if you are in any position in your life where you're feeling like you're being stretched out, where you feel like you're giving too much and you're not getting a lot in return. I've had days like that. I mean, my family, I have my other job, which is teaching special education. You can get pretty stretched out, pretty thin, psychologically, emotionally. And sometimes you need to carve a little time out for yourself or to take care of yourself. And therapy can give you the tools to find that balance in your life. So you can keep supporting others, but you don't have to leave yourself behind. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Now, guess what? You can find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. It is the 10th anniversary of the 2013 World Series, between the Boston Red Sox and the St. Louis Cardinals. And since then, both teams have had some success. The Cardinals made the playoffs in 2014, 2015, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. The Red Sox wound up making the postseason 3 straight years as division titles, 16, 17, winning the World Series in 18, albeit in somewhat suspicious manner, and making it back to the ALCS in 2021. Now, the Red Sox looked like a team that was a little bit rudderless going into this year, and the Cardinals looked like the only team that was trying to win the National League Central. So if you had told me at the beginning of the year that on May 5th, I would be doing a segment on how the two teams from that year are going in opposite directions, I would have said, well, of course, the Cardinals are about to win the division and the Red Sox are about to rebuild. No, 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 no. The Red Sox somehow, some way, in a way that I don't understand, are in the middle of a 6-game winning streak. And what have I said? It is never the wrong time of the year to win 6 games in a row. But they're getting the wins when they need it. And against teams that, hell, I thought the Blue Jays were going to win the division. The Red Sox just leapfrogged the Blue Jays, who are in the middle of a 5-game slide in their own way. And it's not like the Blue Jays aren't hitting. Vladdy Guerrero, Bichette's been getting tons of hits. Their offense is still out there pounding it, but the Red Sox are getting the hits when they need it. Rafael Devers busted out. Connor Joe gets gets a big hit this day. I mean, it seems like every minute there's another pitcher coming out of the bullpen getting the key win. There's another huge hit from someone that you're not expecting. Devers winds up doing the good job. And you look at the game today. You had, what is it? You had Yoshida had a huge game, including a big, huge home run. And, they get good enough pitching to win. They didn't get great pitching today, but they wound up sweeping and winning a slugfest 11-5. The Red Sox are now, are they a contender? I'm not 100% sure right now. The Blue Jays are going to dust themselves off, and the Red Sox are going to play the Phillies, the defending national champions, who are in a little bit of a strange situation. They got Bryce Harper back. Unbelievably, they got Bryce Harper back quicker than I ever thought they would. But the Red Sox dusted themselves off in what I thought was going to be a disastrous season for them. But the disaster is happening in St. Louis. Now, I keep talking about this, but the Cardinals, here we are. It's the 5th of May. They haven't won the first game of a series the entire year, which puts them behind the 8 ball. They've only won 10 games all year long. And starting today, they play the Detroit Tigers. Boyd versus Montgomery. You would think that's a win. But the way the Cardinals have been playing, game one of any series is a loss. And think about today's game. They've lost the series, and the Angels are not exactly putting all their A players on the field. You don't believe me? Mike Trout got the day off. All right? And, Cannon came out and pitched, and he didn't pitch that well. Let up 5 runs, let up 2 runs in the first inning. The Cardinals are up 2-0 against the Angels, who are resting Mike Trout. That's got to be a W, right? No. And Finger got the 3-run home run. It was 2-0 Cardinals after 1. It was 10-2 Angels after 3. And they jump out to an early lead of a Troutless Angels team. And Flaherty couldn't even make it through the 3rd. He let up 10 earned runs. 10. Somebody played Flaherty on their fantasy team today. If you can't win a game where the Angels aren't starting Mike Trout and you jump out to a 2-0 lead, and forget winning the game, by the 3rd inning, you're looking around thinking, I wonder which utility infielder can pitch. They got swept. This was a game the Angels were punting. You notice, remember when I said about the Orioles, that they won a game where the pitching staff let up 10 runs. And so therefore that was a game that the Orioles probably shouldn't have won, but they did. Today was a day where the Cardinals scored 7 runs. We're up 2-0 in the first, playing an Angels team not having Mike Trout throw. And not only did they lose, they lost 11-7, and it wasn't really that close. They pulled 11-7. They didn't score in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning. The Cardinals are reeling right now. They got the hits today. They don't get the pitching. When they get the pitching, they don't get the hits. And they're in dead last place. And I'll tell you the thing, the rest of the division is opening up the porch doors for them to run through. Look at the rest of the division. The Pirates are on a 6-game losing streak. And the Brewers, who are finding new ways to lose left and right, got swept by the Colorado Rockies. Pirates got swept. Brewers got swept. Cubs are on a 3-game losing streak. The Reds are the Reds. This is the exact scenario that would allow the Cardinals to make up ground. And guess what? They made up 0. The Pirates are on a 6-game losing streak, and the Cardinals didn't pick up a single game. And if the Cardinals don't make the postseason, this is the time you have to look to, where the Pirates and the Brewers showed, all right, we're vulnerable, some take advantage. No. Stay. They pulled a Lisa Loeb and said, stay. So I don't know what to do with the Cardinals at this point. I really don't. Do you call up everyone? Do you give Bumgarner a shot? I don't know. But they look like a team that can't take advantage of opportunities. And do you know what? We praise the Orioles for taking advantage of a weak schedule. Now we got to bury the Cardinals. Are they bad? Are the Red Sox good? I don't know. It's tough to tell. But one thing I know that is not tough to tell is that you should be looking long and hard at Rocket Money. Now, have you ever heard ads that say things like, oh, try this service for free for 30 days? And then you try it and then you completely forget that you have it and you're hooked on a subscription. Most people have subscriptions that they've forgotten about, that people are wasting money and they don't even know they're doing it. Rocket Money helps you find those forgotten subscriptions so you can stop paying for the ones you don't use. Do you know how much subscription you really have? Do you think I got about $80 a month of subscriptions? Chances are you're closer to 200. And that adds up. Over a year, that could be over $1,000, maybe $2,000. If you don't know exactly how much money you're spending every month, you need Rocket Money. Rising prices are stressing you out. This helps you cut the costs. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they've forgotten about. All right? Rocket Money helps you find those subscriptions. And if you don't want those subscriptions anymore, you cancel. And Rocket Money will cancel for you. It's that easy. Rocket Money helps you manage all your finances in one place, categorize your expenses, track your budget. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money and saving the average person up to $720 an hour. So stop. $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions. Manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. I do my in memoriam video every year, and you wind up praising people and doing things honoring great players. And I think sometimes it's important to honor people while they're still alive. And today is the 5th day of May. And that means we can honor arguably the greatest baseball player of all time, who is still alive. And that's Willie Mays. Willie Mays is 92, will be 92 years old on May 6th. And he is, and we'll be celebrating his birthday over the weekend. And it's worth pointing out his brilliance. He is someone who, if you go, when you go to baseballreference.com, it's the single greatest website in the history of planet Earth. And if you led the league in a category, it's in bold. It's boldface. There's a lot of bold in Willie Mays's entry there, and not just in all the traditional stats too. If you're going to the sabermetrics world, whether it's war, O war, D war, whatever kind of war you're into, between 1954, if just for war, between 1954 and 1966, he led the league in war 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. In 12 years, in 13 years, he led the league in WAR 10 times. And this was an era where you had Frank Robinson, Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks, so many great players. And he was, by that metric, in the lead. And I'm telling you, if you go down his accomplishments, if you go down all the, whether people didn't know he was leading the league in OPS all those years, but he was. People didn't know some of the categories like power speed number. They didn't know that back then. He led the league 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 times. Led the league. People didn't know about win probability added, but he would lead the league left and right, has the fourth highest career of that stat. Situational wins added, they didn't know that stat then, but he led the league constantly in that. Did they know the stats like base out wins added? I don't even know what that means or how it's calculated. Led the league in that in 58, 61, 64, 65. Total run zones. I don't know how to calculate that. Led the league in that a bunch of times. And but all these categories, whether they're traditional stats, whether they're new stats, left and right, he leads the league in them. Just by looking at the classic stats, he would constantly lead the league. He led the league 1, 2, 3, 4 times in home runs in an era where Hank Aaron was playing. He led the league 4 times in stolen bases. He led the league 3 times in triples. He won batting titles. He won OPS titles. Lead the league in runs scored. Lead the league in virtually every category you could think of. They didn't know OPS plus back then, but guess who was leading it left and right? That'd be Willie Mays. A look at some of some of his amazing accomplishments over the years. Some of the stuff listed at MLB.com, where they talk about he was, all the years he led the league in triples and in home runs, and how he was the first 50-20 man, 50 home runs, 20 stolen bases. You take a look at, he had the 3,000 hits, 300 average, 300 home runs, and of course he passed most of those. And in his stats against players with, this is an amazing stat at MLB.com. The players that he had some of the best performances as a hitter were Warren Spahn and Don Drysdale. 2 Hall of Famers were the ones he hit the most. And all these incredible statistics, all these incredible things he's done in his career. And here's the thing that is in some ways the most mind-boggling of all these things, where he hits, over 3,000 hits, over 600 home runs, all these things he wound up doing. It could have been better. It could have been more for 2 things that were beyond his control. He was a Rookie of the Year in 1951. The Giants went to the World Series. He was the MVP in 1954 when the Giants won the World Series. Between 52 and 53, he played a grand total of 34 games. The reason why is he was in military service. He was in military service in 52 and 53, which held him to just a combined 34 games in those 2 years. It's Ted Williams syndrome. It's easy to think he would have hit 20 home runs in each of those seasons. Easy. And if that were the case, that's adding 40 home runs to his total. His total was 660. Add 40 home runs to that, he's in the 700 club. And not only that, you've got to think that, yes, he was at the end of his career and was a shell of his former self in 1973. But 1973 was the year that Henry Aaron ended with 713 homers, 1 shy of Ruth. Add 40 home runs to 660, what do you got? 700. Thinking there would have been a possibility that Mays would come back and say, look it, I got to have 15 home runs left in this bat. I got to take a shot at it. If he was at 700 home runs, he's got to think I got a shot at this. But here's the other thing that happened. When the teams were starting to move around, Henry Aaron was on the Milwaukee Braves, who had moved from Boston to Milwaukee and played in Milwaukee County Stadium, which was a very, very good hitter's ballpark. I'm not taking anything away from Henry Aaron, who was one of the great talents and arguably the greatest offensive player in the history of baseball. I'll say this. Candlestick Park, where the Giants moved to after playing in the Polo Grounds in New York, was a very difficult hitter's park. It wasn't a home run paradise. The crazy winds blowing around, designed for the pitchers. Henry Aaron played in a hitter's ballpark in Milwaukee and then later went to the launching zone, which was Atlanta, while Willie Mays played in the pitcher's park. Say, how many years did Willie Mays play in San Francisco? Let's just say, let's take a look at this. His first year, okay, it really started at 61 because he played the first few years at Seal Stadium. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's just say 11, okay, because he played a little bit of 72. Let's say 11 years. Let's say there were 5 extra home runs that were taken away from him for playing in a pitcher's ballpark. You're adding 55 home runs right there, plus adding 40 home runs to for the 2 years in the military service. Factors that were not in his control may have taken away nearly 100 home runs to his total. He finished with 660. If the Giants moved to Minnesota, and that's not a pie in the sky thing, the Giants were on the verge of moving to Minnesota. They had worked out a deal to move to Minnesota when it was clear they couldn't survive in New York anymore. Minnesota, the Minneapolis Millers were the top minor league team for the Giants, and Minneapolis was dying to have a Major League Baseball team, and they were able to put them right away in Metropolitan Stadium. They were on the verge, the Giants were on the verge of moving when the Dodgers struck the deal to move to Los Angeles so that it would only work if there was a second team in California. So the Giants scrapped the deal with Minneapolis and moved to San Francisco. Minneapolis was a much better hitter's ballpark. If they had gone to Minneapolis, Willie Mays would probably be the home run king. He was already great. And his birthday is over this weekend. And it's worth celebrating those when they're alive. And that's what I'm going to do. We're going to cover this wild, crazy weekend of games, which include the Yankees-Rays series. We're going to take a look at that when we come back to review the weekend. But follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Praising the Orioles and the Red Sox, questioning the Yankees, and wondering, could Willie Mays have been better? This has been Locked On MLB for the 5th day of May, 2023. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.